You're listening to the Home and Outdoor Living Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Garcia, and my goal is to educate you on various home living topics and provide you with actionable steps to take in your projects. If you're a homeowner, you're in the right place. On to today's episode. Welcome back. Today we are here again with Mark, the owner of Lilley Pad Pools. He's a pool maintenance expert and YouTuber over at Lilley Pad Ponds. Thanks for joining us again, Mark.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be back.
So last time we spoke about pool maintenance, right? You know, the regular upkeep of a pool, what to expect, what to look out for, what to do, whether a homeowner could do it or they're going to hire a professional. And today we're going to dive into another segment of that, which is specifically about repairs, right? So something breaks down. Now we got to fix it. It's not a regular maintenance item, right? We're not changing the oil of the car. Something breaks down, right? Transmission breaks down. We need new tires, something like that. So hoping that we could talk about the top three like repairs that, that are most common that will probably happen at some point in the lifetime of a pool owner. Take it away. What's the first one?
Yeah. So your pool sweep. So the thing that runs around the bottom and cleans the pool is going to be the thing that needs the most maintenance on your pool, mostly because it has the most moving parts. There's three main types of pool sweep. There's a pressure side where water gets pushed into it, and then that's what makes it move around the bottom. There's a suction side where water gets sucked through it, and that makes it run around the bottom. And then there's robotic, where it's actually powered by electricity, and that's what makes it has motors inside that make it move around. With all of those moving parts and it moving around 6, 7, 10 hours a day, you're going to get wear and tear on all of the gears and tires and mechanisms inside. And so that's going to be your most common repairs on that. The tires go bad, the gearboxes go bad. On the pressure side pool sweeps, you're going to have a bag. And so eventually with all the debris going in those and emptying and getting the debris in, and then you empty it, those bags will start to go bad over time. On a suction side, usually you'll have some sort of a basket to collect some of the debris. And wherever that goes, that's going to need preventative maintenance, replacing that basket so that you don't get extra debris over into your equipment. And then, just generally, you're going to be doing gears and gearboxes in there. There's a lot of YouTube videos. If a homeowner wanted to fix that kind of thing, they'd be able to. Otherwise, most professionals can take care of that either poolside, or you can even sometimes take it into your local pool store.
Okay. So you use the term sweep around here. We just call it a pool vacuum, right? We're talking about the same thing?
Yes.
So the tires and mechanisms, these are all things that they can be repaired and should be, like, rather than buying a new unit. Is that what you're saying?
So a new unit is usually going to run you between $600 and for a robotic, you can be up in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. Whereas repairs, sometimes if it's just tires, you could be looking at $30-$40 versus $600, $700 for a whole new sweep.
So is the 600, are those like the manual ones that you have to control?
No, these are all basically automatic, where it's going to move around on its own based on your equipment.
Okay. So anywhere from 600, to $2,000, you can buy an automated, robotic vacuum, and it'll just do its thing, throughout the day, right? I guess depending on that scale, they might have different features, right, that you might want, right?
Yeah, with the high-end robotics, you can control them with your phone and make it drive where you want. The really low-end stuff, it doesn't have a brain in it, so it's just going to do random patterns, and hopefully you get the whole pool clean.
Okay. So that's a typical repair, right? Because it's a critical system to keep everything clean. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff on your own, probably daily, right? So tires, right? Gearboxes, you mentioned, I guess there's two ways to have it, fixed, right? Either they have a pro come out and fix it, or they drop it off, somewhere to get fixed, or, maybe pull up some YouTube videos and learn how to open up their systems, right? What would the next common repair be, on a pool system?
Yeah, so your filtration is going to be the next most common thing to break down. And the way that you'll know that is your water's just not staying as clean or as clear as you want it. There's three main types of filters. There's a diatomaceous earth filter. There's a sand filter, and there's a cartridge filter. And so depending on which one you have, different stuff can happen. A sand filter, typically, if that one's breaking down, you're going to notice there's these things on the bottom of the sand bed called laterals. And what that does is it keeps the sand from going back in the pool. And when those crack or deteriorate, you're going to get little particles of sand back into your pool from your sand filter. The other way that those will break down is usually you'll have a multi-port valve on top or some kind of valve system. And so if you're noticing leaking or water coming out of your backwash, that's going to be your common other issue. And there's usually just a gasket in there that you can replace, or even just the entire valve head assembly, and swap that out, and then you're good. On a diatomaceous earth filter, you've got called grids inside, and you're going to want to be able to, if you're getting diatomaceous earth back into your pool, which is just kind of like this whitish substance, there's usually a hole in one of those grids, or your manifold on top is broken. Those are things you can swap out there. And then on a cartridge filter, if you're just getting generally debris back in your pool, or your pool's turning green or doing things like that, it's possible that there's a hole in one of those cartridges, or they're gummed up with oils or calcium.
Okay. There's a lot of words there that I have no idea what you just said. So, like, how's somebody going to know what type of filter that they have?
Yeah, so on the outside of the filter, there's usually going to be a sticker that will tell you what type of filter you have, and then it'll usually even give you part numbers for what type of media you might have inside. So if you had a cartridge filter, it might say clean and clear 420 or something like that on the actual filter itself. And then that would be, you go, okay, I need a clean and clear 420 cartridge. On that particular model, there's 4 of them inside, so you need 4. On a sand filter, it'll tell you, what type of sand, how much sand you need to add if you wanted to replace the sand, that kind of thing.
Okay. So looking at the filter unit that you've got on site, right, it's going to give you brand name, model number, and then from there, you'll be able to identify what kind of system it is, be able to diagnose it, right? Based on what you told me, I don't know if I would be able to figure that out. So I might be looking at some YouTube videos, but how should somebody go about, having their filter fixed up or maintained?
Yeah, so most people are going to call a professional for that kind of thing if they're noticing anything weird going on with the pool, because it could also be another issue somewhere else. And it's, instead of spending all the money on all these parts, it's easier to call a professional and have it diagnosed properly the first time. And then you don't have to buy parts, swap them out, and go, oh, it wasn't that, it was this other issue somewhere. So usually I tell people they should call a professional. It is possible to do work yourself on filters, but it is a pressure vessel. And so if you do it wrong and you mess something up, it does have the possibility of exploding. So you definitely want to know what you're doing if you are going to mess with it.
So vacuum could be something that, somebody could fix up, right? But it sounds like the filter system is a little bit iffy, right? Like if you probably haven't done it before, if you're not really knowledgeable about it, probably maybe shouldn't touch it, because is it possible that you could really damage the whole thing or break the whole thing?
Yes. So if you do it all the way wrong, I mean, you can blow the top of the filter off into your neighbor's yard and potentially kill yourself. So there is some danger. It's not very common, but if you don't know what you're doing, it is possible to definitely get great harm.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, it makes sense to me. What would the third most common repair be?
Yeah. So usually your pump is going to be your next most common repair. There's going to be potentially multiple pumps on your pool system, depending on how it's set up. Sometimes you'll have booster pumps for that pool sweep, the vacuum that goes around the bottom. Sometimes you'll have features like waterfalls and stuff like that. But then you're always going to have your main filtration pump. And since that thing's running between 4 and 24 hours a day, it's going to get wear and tear and have issues down the road eventually. Oftentimes, you're going to get leaks around where the pipes come in with the vibration of that pump over time. So that's going to be something that you want to look for. The O-ring, there's on the pump lid where there's the basket in front where you can empty the leaves out, that O-ring eventually will start to deteriorate after a couple of years, and you'll want to replace that because you'll get air leaks and stuff coming inside. And then eventually your shaft seal, where the electric motor is separated from the water, there's a seal there, and that seal eventually will start to deteriorate, and you want to replace that.
So this pump situation, how often is this going to occur, these items?
Yeah, so it's not going to be nearly as common as the other stuff. Usually you'll get, depending on your chemistry and all that stuff, I repair a pump maybe every 3 years, something on a pump. And then you also have things like bearings and stuff like that that'll go bad, but you'll just notice a really loud howling or buzzing, or the pump just won't turn on at all, and that could be a different issue too. So typically a pump will last between 3 and 15 years. The average that people are getting is closer to 3 to 5, depending on the pump, the manufacturer, how well the chemistry is kept in the pool, and then how your equipment's plumbed.
And is it a vacuum situation where it's pretty easy to replace these parts, or is it a filter situation where we could, be blowing stuff up?
Yeah, so I would say that it's almost in between. If you have electrical experience and you really understand electricity, say you could wire your own electrical sockets in your house or wire lights, it's something that you might be able to take on by yourself. Otherwise, I would say definitely call a professional, because usually you're going to have 110 or 220 coming in. And if you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't feel good to get shocked by that. And then you also have water there too. So standing in a puddle of water and playing with electricity is never a good idea.
Okay. So just the way that the pump systems are made, you're at a greater risk for like electrocution, not so much the filter.
Yeah, so the filter is not going to have any power to it. So the pump itself is where the electricity goes. I mean, there is a possibility there's moving parts in there. On the newer pumps that they have, there's giant magnets and there's a lot of capacitors. And so those can be fairly dangerous if you try to open that up. Typically, even pool guys don't open those up these days. They just replace the entire pump itself.
Okay. So the pump, there could be a simple fix somebody's got to do, right? And that maybe they're savvy enough to do it. Otherwise, if it's a serious issue, it might be just better with a professional or a full-on replacement.
Again, it's kind of like with the filter, that if you don't know what's going on with it, it's going to be faster and cheaper for you to just call a professional to have them diagnose it within a few minutes, instead of going through 6-10 hours of YouTube trying to figure out, well, is it a capacitor? Is it a bearing? Is it, do I have a power issue? Do I have a clogged impeller? There's so many potential issues that a professional that works with it every day is going to be able to tell you really quickly, oh, hey, it's this. And they're only going to charge you between $100 and $200 for a service fee usually, and then most of the time that'll go towards whatever repairs you might need. If it's something easy, they might be able to swap it out in that same time frame. If you need a new pump, they may not have one on the truck, but they'll usually work with you to try to get that cost in there somewhere.
Tell me what you mean by cheaper. You said it would cost $100 to $200, but you said it would be cheaper to have a pro. Tell me what you mean by that.
I mean your value of your time. Say you were going to spend 10 hours on YouTube messing with it, and then you replace the wrong part, and you do that 2 or 3 times, it's going to cost you way more in the long run to get all that done, plus all your stress and all your headaches, versus just having a professional come out, test a couple things, go, oh, hey, it's a capacitor, and then be able to swap it out right then.
So you're talking about, someone spends 10 hours doing their research. Well, what's their time worth, right? So if they get paid, let's say even $20 an hour, right? 10 hours, $200 right there that they didn't earn because they were fumbling around with this thing. Plus, fumbling around with the actual unit. Maybe they got something wrong, so they wasted some parts, they broke something else, and now it costs them even more than that, right? So is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yeah, and misdiagnosis. They might have thought, oh, it was this, but really it was something else.
Right. No, that's fair. That makes sense. So we talked about vacuum systems needing repair, right? Which would happen how often?
I would say it depends on your usage. The more that it runs around, the more you're going to repair it. But most people, about every year, you want to give it a tune-up.
Okay. And the filters, right? How often, would you have to do some maintenance on those?
Again, it depends on all your setup and everything, but usually closer to 3 to 5 years before you're going to need to do any significant maintenance.
Okay. And then we addressed, about every 3 years or so for the pump. What other items should the homeowner be aware about, or did we cover the main 3?
There's your equipment pad where you've got your pump and your filter and all of that. You could also have other features like a time clock or automation. You could have a heater, a heat pump, lights, different stuff like that. And so that's all of those have extreme variables in how long they'll last and all of that. So those different things can break down there. You also have your pool shell. So whether you have a gunite, concrete, plaster, pebble tech surface, whatever you want to call it, a vinyl line or a fiberglass pool, they're all going to have different maintenance needs over time. For example, a vinyl line pool might need to be replaced every 10 to 15 years.
The pool is getting replaced?
It could be 10 to 15 years. Some people get more time out of them, some people get less. It all depends on the chemistry, how much usage you get. I mean, if you've got dogs and stuff hopping in there, sometimes they'll tear the liner up faster. If you have really poor chemistry, it'll make the liner brittle. And then as it tries to shrink and stretch throughout the summer and winter months, it could tear. And then also, it's just age. That vinyl eventually will get old and brittle.
Sorry, what I understood you say was that the vinyl liner pool only lasts 15 to 20 years. So you're literally going to dig it out and rebuild the whole pool?
No. So just the actual vinyl liner itself. So there's a inside, usually you'll put either a concrete or a concrete sand mixture to create the shape of the pool. And then they'll hang a vinyl liner inside that and then fill it with water.
Right. Okay. So it's, it's the plastic liner that's inside the pool that would only last, 15 or so years that you're going to replace. Right. Okay.
And then on a fiberglass pool, those will usually go between 15 and 30 years. Some manufacturers will say longer. It all depends on your chemistry and how well you take care of it. And the same goes for concrete pools, whatever you want to call it. If you have a pebble tech surface or a plaster, a plaster pool is typically 10 to 15 years before it needs to be replastered. And what you'll do is you'll chip out, and you'll have a professional come, and you'll chip out all of the plaster and leave the concrete behind it. And then they'll come in and redo that plaster, or they can redo it with a new pebble tech product, which usually has more like a 15 to 30 year life on it.
Okay. You said that 15 to 30 years the fiberglass pool will go. What do you mean by that?
That's about how long before you start to get fibers popping out. See that there's a gel coat on top of, so the fiberglass is a fiberglass shell, and then there's a gel coat on top of that fiberglass. And the better chemistry you have, the longer that gel coat will last. And the worse chemistry you have, the more it'll eat through that. And then you'll start to have issues in the long run with the fiberglass starting to show through into your pool, creating some itching and then more space for algae. And it's just going to be a rough surface.
And so how do you deal with that?
Most people will either have a company come out and redo the gel coat, or they're just going to replace the entire pool itself.
Okay. Why would they replace the entire pool instead of resurfacing?
So oftentimes with a fiberglass pool, since it's so light, when you remove all the water, if there's any water present underground, it can actually push that whole pool up out of the ground with the water table. It basically becomes a giant fiberglass boat and can pop up out of the ground.
Are you saying that they would replace the fiberglass pool then because they drain it to go resurface and then it pops out on them? Or what's the scenario?
So that's one possibility. Most pool professionals, when they do a gel coat, they'll dig down well points all around the pool and pump the water out, and then hopefully nothing happens. But oftentimes, once you hit that, say, 30-year mark, a lot of people have either they don't have kids now and they don't want the pool anymore, or they're going to sell the house and they don't want the pool, and they'll either tear it out or they want a different shape or different features. And so oftentimes, people will either just get a whole new pool instead of doing a gel coat, or they'll say, hey, let me just do a quick gel coat. You can also do a pool paint, but that only lasts a year or two before you've got to redo it.
Seems like a really expensive endeavor to pull that pool, especially if it's going to be around a very expensive landscape.
Yeah, it's pricey. So fiberglass is usually the cheapest and quickest to get installed, and then it lasts a long time. But when you've got to fix it, it's typically a large cost to fix it.
Are we missing anything else?
I think generally that's it.
Okay, very good. Where can people find out more about you and your service and inquire a little bit more about each repair that we talked about?
Yeah, they can go to lilleypadpools.com, and that's LilleyPadpools lilleypadpools.com. And they can also email me at lilleypadpools@gmail.com directly and just say, hey, I had a question about this, and just put in the title, I heard you from the podcast and I have this question.
Perfect. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mark. We really appreciate it and sharing your knowledge with us. And thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. If you found value in this episode, you can support us for free by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. See you next time.